October 14, 1943. British censorship headquarters, Liverpool, England. Captain Margaret Hartley sat at a wooden desk surrounded by towers of letters. Thousands upon thousands of pieces of mail, all written in German, all intercepted from Wehrmacht soldiers attempting to send them home. Her job was to read them, analyze them, extract intelligence, and determine which could be forwarded and which must be destroyed. Today, she held a letter that would change the course of the Italian campaign. The letter was from Jeffreiter Hans Mueller, a private in the 16th Panzer Division. He wrote to his wife in Hamburg. The letter seemed innocent. He missed home. He was tired. The weather was terrible. He mentioned his friend Karl from Munich had been transferred to their unit. He complained about the cold mountain air and how different it was from the heat they'd experienced in Sicily. He mentioned they'd been moving north for 3 days and finally stopped somewhere the locals called a monastery town. Captain Hartley didn't speak much German, but she didn't need to. The letter went to the translation desk, then to the intelligence analysis section. Within 2 hours, analysts had determined that Mueller's unit, the 16th Panzer Division, was now positioned near Cassino, Italy. The mention of mountain cold and a monastery town could only mean Monte Cassino. The transfer of a Munich soldier suggested the division was being reinforced. The 3 days of movement indicated they'd come from the south. This single letter, one among millions, had revealed the German defensive position at what would become one of the war's bloodiest battles. What Jeffreiter Mueller didn't know, what none of the 18 million German soldiers writing letters home knew, was that their innocent correspondence was the greatest intelligence leak in military history. Every letter they wrote, every postcard they sent, every package they mailed was potentially intercepted, read, analyzed, and used against them. The Germans sent 40 billion pieces of mail during the war. The Allies intercepted and examined millions of them. And from these letters, from soldiers complaining about weather and mentioning towns and describing their units, the Allies built a comprehensive intelligence picture that revealed troop movements, morale levels, supply situations, and strategic intentions. The Germans called their military postal system Feldpost. They believed it was secure, efficient, and essential for morale. They were right about 2 of those things. It was efficient and essential, but it was catastrophically insecure. Every letter a German soldier sent home was a potential intelligence report delivered directly to Allied hands. The Germans never knew they were giving away their secrets 1 letter at a time, and that ignorance cost them battles, campaigns, and ultimately contributed to their defeat. This is the story of how 40 billion letters became the most successful intelligence operation of World War II. How German soldiers trying to maintain morale inadvertently revealed every movement of every unit. How the Allies built an intelligence apparatus that read 10 million letters monthly and extracted strategic value from mundane complaints about cold food and wet socks. And how the Americans learned from German mistakes, creating a mail system so secure that not a single piece of Allied intelligence was compromised through postal interception during the entire war. Let me take you back to 1939 and show you how the largest postal operation in history became the largest intelligence failure in history. When World War II began in September 1939, the German military postal service, the Feldpost, was already the most sophisticated military mail system ever created. It had been designed during the 1930s as Germany rearmed and expanded its military. The system's goal was simple but ambitious: ensure that every German soldier, no matter where he served, could send and receive mail regularly. German military planners understood that mail from home was essential for morale. A soldier who could communicate with his family, who knew his loved ones were safe, who received packages and letters, fought better than a soldier cut off from home. The Feldpost was a marvel of organization. Every military unit, down to the company level, had a designated field post number. Soldiers didn't write their actual location on letters, just their field post number. A letter addressed to Feldpost number 12,345 would be routed through the military postal system to wherever that unit was currently stationed. This system had several advantages. First, it maintained operational security. A letter captured by the enemy wouldn't reveal unit locations because it only showed an arbitrary number. Second, it allowed mail to follow units as they moved. Even if a division relocated hundreds of miles, mail would still reach soldiers because the field post number remained constant. Third, it was efficient. Specialized postal troops handled sorting and delivery, freeing combat soldiers from mail duty. The system was enormous. At its peak, the Feldpost employed over 100,000 personnel. They operated thousands of field post offices, from permanent facilities in garrison towns to mobile sorting stations that moved with combat units. The Feldpost handled not just letters but packages, parcels, official documents, newspapers, and even money transfers. It was a complete postal system operating within a military framework, and it worked remarkably well. German soldiers received mail regularly, often weekly, even when serving on the front lines in Russia or Africa or Italy. This regular contact with home was a significant morale factor. The volume of mail was staggering. During the war, German soldiers and their families exchanged approximately 40 billion pieces of mail. That's 40,000 million individual letters, postcards, and packages. To put that in perspective, if you laid 40 billion letters end to end, they would circle the Earth over 400 times. The Feldpost at peak operation moved over 60 million pieces of mail per day. Every single day, 60 million letters and packages moving through a military postal system that spanned from Norway to Africa, from France to the gates of Moscow. But the Feldpost had a catastrophic flaw. It was completely insecure. German military censorship was minimal and inconsistent. Officers were supposed to review outgoing mail from their units, but this was rarely enforced. Combat operations took priority. Officers didn't have time to read hundreds of letters. Most mail went uncensored. Even when censorship occurred, it was perfunctory. Officers looked for obvious security violations, direct mentions of locations or unit movements, and blacked those out. But soldiers quickly learned to write in ways that seemed innocent but conveyed information. They used euphemisms, references to previous locations, descriptions of weather and terrain that implied where they were. More critically, the Germans never imagined the scale at which the Allies would intercept and analyze mail. German security doctrine assumed some mail would be captured. Individual letters might fall into enemy hands if a courier was captured or a field post office overrun. But the Germans believed the enemy couldn't possibly intercept and analyze mail on an industrial scale. They were catastrophically wrong. The British began intercepting German mail almost immediately after the war started. Initially, interception was opportunistic. British forces captured German positions and seized mail waiting to be sent. Submarines intercepted neutral ships carrying mail between Germany and occupied territories. But British intelligence quickly recognized the value and organized systematic interception. By 1940, the British were intercepting German mail at multiple points. Ships traveling between Germany and Norway were stopped and searched. Neutral ships carrying mail through the Mediterranean were diverted to British ports. Resistance forces in occupied France, Belgium, and Netherlands intercepted mail bags and copied or photographed letters before allowing them to continue. The scale increased dramatically after America entered the war. The United States Postal Censorship Operation, established in 1941, became the largest censorship organization in history. At peak operation, it employed over 15,000 people in stations across the United States, Britain, and other Allied territories. These censors examined every piece of international mail entering or leaving Allied countries. But they also examined intercepted enemy mail. The Bermuda censorship station alone, positioned to intercept mail flowing between Europe and South America, examined over 1 million pieces of mail weekly. The Liverpool station examined 2 million pieces weekly. Stations in Cairo, Algiers, and Naples examined mail intercepted in the Mediterranean. By 1944, Allied censorship stations were examining approximately 10 million pieces of mail monthly, much of it German military correspondence intercepted by various means. The process was industrial in scale. Intercepted mail arrived at censorship stations in sacks, sometimes tons of mail daily. Initial sorters separated obvious categories: military mail, civilian mail, official communications, packages. The military mail went to specialized analysis sections where censors fluent in German read every letter. They weren't just looking for obvious intelligence. They were looking for any information that could be useful. A soldier mentioning cold weather helped identify units in northern sectors. A soldier complaining about sand in his boots indicated desert service. A soldier writing about his unit receiving new tanks suggested armor buildup. A soldier mentioning a friend from another unit revealed connections between divisions. A soldier complaining about food shortages indicated supply problems. Every detail, no matter how trivial, was extracted and catalogued. The British developed a sophisticated system for categorizing intelligence from mail. Letters were rated for intelligence value. Category A letters contained explicit intelligence, unit designations, locations, movements, equipment. These were immediately forwarded to military intelligence. Category B letters contained implicit intelligence, morale information, supply situations, casualty reports. These went to analysts who combined information from multiple letters to build comprehensive pictures. Category C letters contained no obvious intelligence, but were archived because they might become valuable when combined with other information. The Americans refined this system even further. The United States Censorship Division created detailed intelligence summaries based on intercepted mail. These summaries, distributed to military commanders weekly, contained information derived from thousands of letters. A typical summary might note, based on analysis of 3,847 intercepted letters from German personnel in Italy during the week of October 3, 1943, the following intelligence has been derived. 16th Panzer Division has relocated from southern Italy to Cassino area. Morale described as poor due to heavy casualties and lack of winter equipment. Unit strength estimated at 60% due to losses at Salerno. Soldiers report expecting Allied attack on Cassino, but express confidence in defensive positions. Ammunition described as adequate but fuel supplies limited. This summary, built from thousands of soldiers mentioning small details in letters home, provided Allied commanders with comprehensive intelligence on German positions, strength, morale, and logistics. And it came not from spies or code breaking, but from soldiers writing innocent letters about their experiences. Let me tell you about one specific case that demonstrates the intelligence value. In January 1944, Allied forces were planning the Anzio landing, an amphibious assault behind German lines in Italy. The operation's success depended on surprise. If the Germans anticipated the landing and concentrated forces, the attack could fail catastrophically. Allied intelligence needed to know German force dispositions around Anzio. Intercepted mail provided the answer. Over a 2-week period, British censors examined approximately 50,000 intercepted letters from German soldiers in Italy. From these letters, analysts identified 14 different units positioned within 50 miles of Anzio. The letters revealed which units were at full strength and which were depleted. They indicated morale levels, with units that had been in continuous combat expressing exhaustion, while fresh units expressed confidence. Soldiers mentioned defensive preparations, indicating where the Germans expected attacks. Most critically, the letters revealed that the Germans did not expect an attack at Anzio specifically. Soldiers wrote about expecting Allied attacks further south or along the main defensive lines. No letters mentioned Anzio as a likely target. This negative intelligence, the absence of concern about Anzio, helped confirm that the landing location remained secret. Allied commanders proceeded with the operation with confidence that strategic surprise remained intact. The Anzio landing on January 22, 1944, achieved complete tactical surprise. German forces were caught unprepared. The initial landing succeeded with minimal casualties. The operation eventually became a brutal stalemate for months, but the initial success was partly due to intelligence derived from intercepted mail confirming that surprise had been maintained. Now contrast this with American mail security. The United States military understood from the beginning that mail could compromise security. American postal censorship was comprehensive, mandatory, and rigorously enforced. Every single piece of mail sent by American military personnel was examined by trained censors before being allowed to leave military custody. No exceptions. American soldiers were instructed on what they could and couldn't write. They couldn't mention unit designations, locations, movements, equipment, casualties, or operations. These restrictions were enforced by unit censors, usually officers, who read every letter their men wrote. Letters that violated security protocols were returned to the sender with violations marked. Repeated violations could result in loss of mail privileges or even disciplinary action. But the Americans understood that overly restrictive censorship would damage morale. Soldiers needed to communicate with families, so the American military developed a system that maintained security while allowing meaningful communication. They created standardized forms for quick messages. They established clear guidelines on what was acceptable. Soldiers could write about general experiences, feelings, and non-sensitive activities. They could request items from home. They could discuss personal matters freely. They just couldn't discuss anything that might help the enemy. More ingeniously, the Americans developed V-mail, Victory Mail, a system that revolutionized military correspondence while maintaining perfect security. V-mail worked through photographic reduction. A soldier wrote a letter on a special V-mail form. The letter was photographed onto microfilm. The microfilm was shipped to the United States, where it was developed and printed at reduced size. The resulting letter, about 1/4 the size of a standard letter, was delivered to the recipient. V-mail had multiple advantages. First, it was secure. Even if a ship carrying V-mail was sunk or captured, the enemy would capture microfilm that required specialized equipment to read. Individual letters couldn't be easily intercepted. Second, it was efficient. A mail bag that could carry 150 pounds of letters could carry the equivalent of 1 million V-mail letters when reduced to microfilm. This saved shipping space, allowing more cargo space for weapons and supplies. Third, it was fast. V-mail could be transported quickly because of its reduced size. During the war, Americans sent over 1 billion V-mail letters. Not a single piece of intelligence was ever compromised through V-mail interception. The system was completely secure. Germans never captured useful intelligence from American mail because American mail never contained useful intelligence. The difference in security culture was stark. German soldiers wrote freely, assuming their mail was private. American soldiers wrote carefully, knowing their mail was monitored. German officers treated mail censorship as a burden that interfered with combat duties. American officers treated it as a critical security responsibility. Germany sent 40 billion pieces of largely uncensored mail. America sent 1 billion pieces of carefully censored, photographically secured mail. The intelligence advantage this gave the Allies cannot be overstated. Let me give you another example from the Eastern Front. In early 1943, German forces were preparing for Operation Citadel, the offensive at Kursk that would become the largest tank battle in history. The operation was supposed to be secret. The Germans went to extraordinary lengths to maintain operational security. Units were moved at night. Radio silence was enforced. Cover stories were spread suggesting attacks elsewhere. But German soldiers wrote letters home. They wrote about being issued new equipment. They mentioned training for offensive operations. They complained about delays in the attack schedule. They described seeing massive concentrations of tanks and artillery. These letters were intercepted by Soviet partisan forces and forwarded to Soviet intelligence. From these letters, combined with other intelligence sources, Soviet commanders knew the attack was coming at Kursk, knew approximately when it would come, and knew the German forces were larger than ever before. This knowledge allowed the Soviets to prepare the most elaborate defensive system ever constructed. They built thousands of miles of trenches, anti-tank ditches, and fortifications. They positioned reserves precisely where they would be needed. When the German attack began on July 5, 1943, the Soviets were completely prepared. The Battle of Kursk became a German disaster. Over 800,000 casualties on both sides. The Germans lost offensive capability on the Eastern Front and never regained strategic initiative. And part of their defeat came from soldiers writing letters home that revealed the attack. The Germans eventually recognized that mail security was a problem, but they never solved it. In 1943, German High Command issued directives tightening mail censorship. Officers were ordered to read all outgoing mail. Soldiers were instructed not to mention military details, but enforcement was inconsistent. Frontline units under pressure couldn't dedicate officers to reading hundreds of letters daily. Soldiers continued writing as they always had. The flow of intelligence through intercepted mail continued unabated. German security services captured some Allied mail and attempted to derive intelligence from it, but they found nothing useful. American and British letters had been thoroughly censored. References to locations were blacked out. Unit designations were removed. The letters were personal but contained no military information. German intelligence officers, accustomed to gaining valuable intelligence from their own intercepted mail, were frustrated by the complete absence of intelligence in Allied mail. A captured German intelligence report from late 1944, found in Army archives after the war, expressed this frustration. Enemy mail yields no intelligence value. Censorship is complete and professional. Letters contain only personal matters and carefully sanitized comments. In contrast, our own mail continues to reveal sensitive information despite directives. Soldiers do not understand security importance. Officers do not enforce censorship. The enemy knows more about our operations from our letters than we know about theirs from any source. This assessment, written by a German intelligence officer, perfectly captured the disparity. Germany's most sophisticated intelligence analysts could learn nothing from Allied mail, but knew that their own mail was compromising German security. Yet they couldn't fix the problem because it required cultural change throughout the military. The human cost of this intelligence failure was severe. German soldiers died because their letters revealed positions to the enemy. Units were ambushed because intercepted mail revealed their movements. Attacks failed because mail revealed German intentions. Defensive positions were bombarded because letters mentioned locations. Throughout the war, German soldiers unknowingly contributed to their own defeat by writing home. One particularly tragic case involved a soldier named Peter Hoffmann. In December 1944, Hoffmann was serving with the 12th SS Panzer Division in the Ardennes, preparing for what would become the Battle of the Bulge. On December 10th, 5 days before the offensive began, Hoffmann wrote to his girlfriend in Berlin. He mentioned excitement in his unit about an upcoming operation. He wrote that they had been issued winter camouflage and extra ammunition. He mentioned moving to assembly areas near a forest the locals called the Ardennes. He said he hoped the operation would succeed and end the war quickly. Hoffmann's letter was intercepted by British censors. It was one of several dozen similar letters from soldiers in the same area, all mentioning preparations for an offensive in the Ardennes region. These letters, combined with other intelligence, alerted Allied commanders that a German attack was imminent in the Ardennes. The attack on December 16th still achieved tactical surprise at the unit level, but Allied high command was not strategically surprised. They had reserves positioned and could respond quickly. Hoffmann died on December 19th during the battle. His letter, written with love and hope, had contributed to the intelligence that helped defeat the offensive he'd hoped would end the war. He never knew that his private words to his girlfriend had been read by enemy intelligence and used against him. Multiply this by millions. Millions of letters, millions of small details, millions of intelligence fragments that the Allies assembled into comprehensive understanding of German capabilities and intentions. The Germans never knew. They continued writing, continued revealing secrets, continued giving the Allies decisive intelligence advantages. After the war, during interrogations, German officers expressed shock when told about the scale of mail interception and analysis. General Franz Halder, former chief of German General Staff, was shown examples of intelligence derived from intercepted soldier mail. His response, recorded in interrogation transcripts, was stunned disbelief. "We told our soldiers to write home to maintain morale. We believed field post numbers protected security. We never imagined the enemy would intercept and analyze mail on this scale. If we had known, we would have stopped all mail immediately. But stopping mail would have destroyed morale. We were trapped. Allowing mail destroyed security. Stopping mail destroyed morale. The enemy faced no such dilemma because their censorship worked." Halder's assessment identified the fundamental problem. Germany needed mail for morale but couldn't secure it. The Allies needed mail for morale and secured it completely. This asymmetry gave the Allies an intelligence advantage that compounded over time. Every month, every week, every day, Allied intelligence knew more about German forces, while German intelligence learned nothing from Allied mail. The statistics tell the story starkly. From 1942 to 1945, Allied censorship stations examined approximately 100 million pieces of intercepted German military mail. From these letters, they identified unit locations for over 400 German divisions at various times during the war. They tracked unit movements, strength changes, equipment updates, and morale fluctuations. They developed comprehensive order of battle intelligence that was often more accurate than what German high command possessed about their own forces. In contrast, German intelligence examined thousands of pieces of captured Allied mail and derived virtually zero useful intelligence. The disparity was total. Let me tell you about the forgotten heroes of this intelligence war. The censors themselves. Thousands of men and women who sat at desks reading letters in foreign languages, extracting intelligence from mundane correspondence. Many were refugees from Nazi Germany and occupied Europe, fluent in German and motivated by personal hatred of the regime. They read letters describing German soldiers' experiences and extracted military intelligence, while witnessing the human cost of war through intimate correspondence. One censor, a woman named Rachel Steinberg, who worked at the New York censorship station, described her experience in a post-war interview. "I read perhaps 10,000 letters during the war, maybe more. They were letters from German soldiers to their families. The soldiers wrote about missing home, about fear and exhaustion, about friends who died, about hoping the war would end. I felt strange reading these intimate words. These were enemy soldiers, but they were also young men far from home, just like our own soldiers. I had to separate the human from the intelligence. I recorded what mattered for the war effort and tried to forget the rest, but I couldn't forget completely. After the war, I wondered about those men whose letters I read. Did they survive? Did they ever know their private words became intelligence? I'll never know. The psychological toll on censors was significant. They read death notices, love letters, desperate pleas from families, soldiers' fears and hopes. They extracted intelligence from human suffering. Many censors required psychological support after the war, but their work saved lives by providing intelligence that shortened campaigns and prevented casualties. The technology of mail interception and analysis also drove innovations in intelligence processing. The British developed mechanical sorting systems that could categorize thousands of letters hourly based on postal marks and unit designations. They created database systems using punch cards and mechanical tabulators to track information from millions of letters. This was early data analytics applied to intelligence. American censorship developed chemical tests to detect invisible ink, steganography hidden messages, and coded communications in letters. They employed linguists, psychologists, and regional experts to analyze not just what letters said explicitly, but what they implied about morale, loyalty, and unit cohesion. The mail censorship operation became a comprehensive intelligence apparatus that pioneered techniques still used in modern intelligence analysis. By 1945, as Germany collapsed, the flow of mail decreased. German postal services broke down. Units lost contact with rear areas. Soldiers stopped writing because they knew mail wouldn't reach home. The field post system, which had operated since 1939, essentially ceased functioning in the final months. The last pieces of German military mail intercepted by Allied censors came in April 1945. Letters sent weeks earlier that had been caught in the collapsing postal system. After the war, Allied intelligence officers compiled comprehensive reports on the intelligence derived from mail censorship. These reports, many still classified until the 1970s, documented the full scope of the operation. The conclusion was unanimous. Mail interception had provided intelligence of incalculable value. It had revealed German order of battle, tracked unit movements, assessed morale and combat effectiveness, identified supply problems, and provided early warning of major operations. One report, written by British intelligence in 1946, concluded, "The interception and analysis of enemy mail proved to be among the most valuable and consistent sources of intelligence throughout the war." Unlike radio intercepts, which could be silenced through radio discipline, or agent reports, which could be compromised, mail interception provided reliable intelligence that the enemy couldn't stop without destroying morale. The Germans never solved this dilemma. Their need for mail communication exceeded their ability to secure it. We exploited that weakness ruthlessly and to decisive effect. The lessons learned influenced post-war military communications. Modern militaries enforce strict communications security, not just on radio and telephone, but on personal communications. Military mail is carefully controlled. Soldiers are trained extensively on communications security. The mail intelligence disaster of World War II taught militaries that even innocent personal correspondence can compromise operations. But the story of 40 billion letters also reminds us of the human dimension of war. Those letters represented 40 billion moments of connection between soldiers and loved ones. They were declarations of love, descriptions of fear, expressions of hope, reports of survival. They maintained the emotional bonds that kept soldiers fighting and families hoping. The fact that these intimate communications became intelligence tools doesn't diminish their human significance. The Germans wrote those letters because they were human beings far from home, desperate to maintain connection with the lives they'd left behind. The Allies intercepted and analyzed them because they were fighting a war and needed every advantage. Both sides were doing what they believed necessary. One side did it securely. The other side didn't, and that made all the difference. The final irony is that Germany's faith in the Feldpost, their pride in having created the most sophisticated military postal system in history, blinded them to its greatest weakness. They measured success by volume and efficiency, by the millions of letters delivered monthly, by soldiers' morale sustained through contact with home. They never measured the intelligence cost. They never calculated what the enemy learned from those 40 billion letters. American commanders, reading intelligence summaries derived from intercepted German mail, often expressed amazement at what German soldiers revealed. One American general, reviewing an intelligence report based on soldier letters, famously said, "The Germans are defeating themselves one letter at a time. We don't even need spies. Their own soldiers tell us everything." That assessment, perhaps harsh, captured the reality. Germany fought a war on multiple fronts against enemies with superior industrial capacity and resources. They needed every possible advantage. Instead, they handed their enemies an intelligence advantage by failing to secure their own soldiers' mail. Those 40 billion letters, sent with love and hope, became 40 billion intelligence reports delivered directly to Allied analysts. In the end, the story of German mail and Allied censorship is a story about asymmetric advantages in modern warfare. It's not always the side with better weapons or braver soldiers that wins. Sometimes it's the side that makes fewer mistakes. Germany made a critical mistake assuming their postal system was secure. The Allies made no such assumption and built systems that were genuinely secure. That difference in approach, multiplied across billions of letters and thousands of intelligence reports, contributed materially to Allied victory. So when you think about how World War II was won, think beyond battles and campaigns. Think about the young German soldier writing home to his mother, mentioning the weather and his unit's location. Think about the Allied censor reading that letter, extracting the intelligence and forwarding it to commanders. Think about the bomber crews who struck that location 3 days later, guided by intelligence from an intercepted letter. Think about the asymmetric war fought not with guns, but with paper, ink, and analysis. The Germans wrote 40 billion letters and lost the intelligence war. The Americans censored every piece of mail and won it. That's not the dramatic story of great battles, but it's one of the true stories of how wars are actually won. In the details, in the small things, in the letters soldiers write home that reveal more than they should, and in the censors who read those letters and turned them into victory. If this story revealed how something as innocent as letters home became decisive intelligence, how 40 billion pieces of mail defeated Germany one revealed secret at a time, how Allied censorship prevented even a single intelligence leak, while German mail hemorrhaged secrets daily, then subscribe to War Rewind for daily revelations about World War II's untold dimensions. Hit that like button if this changed how you understand intelligence warfare. Comment below what shocked you most. That Germany sent 40 billion letters, that Allies read 10 million monthly, that not a single piece of Allied intelligence leaked through mail, or that German soldiers unknowingly revealed attack plans writing to their families. Tomorrow we uncover another asymmetry that decided the war. Until then, remember that sometimes the most dangerous weapon a soldier carries isn't a rifle, it's a pen.